So the word that gets translated into acedia, it's actually Akedia. I don't know why it says acedia because it's a kappa in the Greek. But I do believe that this word, which the Oxford English Dictionary declared dead in 1933, is a disease of our times. And let us take a look at our issues here. This is deaths from suicide, drugs, alcohol, which is in a way a form of suicide. This is the American numbers and the rates of suicide. The point is to be able to see that it's simply gone up, up, up. More people die of that than multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, and myasthenia gravis. And you see that suicide, which is the ultimate form of despondency, if you look at our neighboring affluent countries, you see up, up in the United States, down in the others. Strangely, that how it has gone down in Russia. Interesting. By the way, if you look at rates of people who consider themselves prayerful and church attendance, those curves go in opposite directions. And the other form of suicide, which is mass shootings, because almost always the person who does the shooting dies. And this tragedy, which is school shootings this is of course an American number. 10 years ago, we used to have school shootings that were 10 times greater than all the other countries, and now it's become 20 times greater. Depends how you define this. Is it death? This is defined as brandishing a weapon, shooting something, not necessarily someone dying. And here is my unproven hypothesis. The unproven hypothesis is that Akedia, which was described by Evagrius as one of the 8 evil thoughts, is not a disease of monastics and religious. It is a disease of a civilization. It is a civilizational illness. 150 years ago, no one would have known what B12 deficiency was, or any vitamin deficiency. The thyroid hormone itself is only 200 years old. And the great age of vitamin discovery, only 100 years old. They would have just seen it as a spiritual disorder. But if you have this, and then say, in other words, well, if you looked at this and said, you could say an illness that has yet to be fully described, the same way 150 years ago, we would look at B12 deficiency, where you became numb and demented and weak, and say, was that not a spiritual disorder? And you may notice that the movie never says the word guns. It doesn't say shootings, just tells the story of those children by their absence. And so this is not a political or policy discussion. Am I personally in favor of restrictions on access to guns? Yeah, well, I'm in New York. In New York, except for law enforcement, I've never seen someone publicly carrying a weapon. But it's not weapons alone. I'm going to show you something which I hope does not upset you terribly much. In other words, yes, it's true that we own more guns per people than any other country. But if you look at our country next door, Canada, has guns, and you say, well, that's proportional. We have 4 times more guns, we have 4 times more homicides, but look at people in Finland. They have the same number of guns as Canada, but they're not. But the Canadians kill 10 times more. Look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong and England own the same amount of guns, but there's not even one murder a year in Hong Kong. So it's not just guns. If it was just guns, then you would see a proportionality. But there are countries that have much fewer guns and have much more murders in the United States. So let's also look that this is a disease of young people. In other words, there's an occasional person who's in their 30s, but the median age is 18. Many of them, as a matter of fact, are 16 and 17 years old. And it's a male disease. There's never been a female lone wolf mass murderer. Never been a female one. Loneliness. Who feels lonely in society? Now, these are world statistics, and there's a lot of different places that it gets surveyed. But and some will show a little bit of an increase in people above 75 and 80. But no matter where you look at it, young people are the most lonely. Young people have the most sadness. 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. Loneliness is a high school disease, middle school and high school disease. Can you say it's who knows? But let's look here. We were not meant as a species to be alone. This is from one of my favorite magazines, The Economist. It shows the concept of living alone is a very recent concept, idea, phenomena, event. However, it's not just living alone. The Cenobitic monastics of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century lived alone and were alone 95% of the time. But suicide was essentially unknown. Didn't exist. It is nothing like the bone-crushing loneliness that we have in the modern city. And so let's look for a second at Phaedo. So Socrates is on the day he is to die, and he's with his friends. And they say, Socrates, Sebes, are you afraid? Oh, no, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of death. No. I'm not afraid. Well, because if you love knowledge, if you're a philosopher, you will become free. You'll be able to see and perceive, and your soul will become absorbed in all the knowledge of the universe. And you'll be able to absorb everything and see the truth, everything. Because, the body's kind of annoying, really. You have to feed it, it gets sick, it gets distracted. It gets ill, you have to clothe it, gets cold. There are appetites and distractions. So it's only at the point of death that the philosopher can truly absorb knowledge, see everything, become free. Well, is the soul immortal? Of course the soul is immortal. And as a matter of fact, it comes back. And as a matter of fact, the difference is that the more of a philosopher you are, the faster it comes back. Other people have to get there and regenerate, need much more time. And so then also the other thing is, in Socrates says, well, if the soul wasn't immortal, that would be very good news for evil, because it means you could do any evil you wanted and it would disappear at death. So no, man, because that way the good and the wise come back faster, and the evil have to live with the repercussions of their evil and wicked acts. Well, Socrates, if you become so free at death, why not commit suicide? Then why not end life? Well, do you consider that you're a property of God? The interesting thing is use the capital gamma. It switches to a capital gamma in the Greek for that one word. Okay, for their property of God. And so, well, if you're a property of God, then you can't destroy yourself. In the same way, well, I mean, he's using fourth century BC terminology, which is you couldn't go destroy your neighbor's cow without permission because it's a property of your neighbor. In this case, it would be more like, you know, steal your neighbor's car because you're a property of God. So, no, we don't have the right to destroy. The rule of Benedict Nursia, that Christian has no right to despair because we have the hope of the incarnation. We're told we cannot despair. And so this is why in Socrates, to not fear death. We're not allowed to fear. We shouldn't. We shouldn't be fearing death. Well, and so then what is this deficiency disease? Akedia. So in Akedia, it translates out into a lack of care, but that ain't really, it's very hard to define. As a matter of fact, it doesn't have a direct translation into English. The same way that atonia, tonia is the word we use medically for to contract. When a muscle contracts or the heart contracts, this is a lack of the ability of the soul to beat. It's an arrhythmia of the soul. Why noonday? Well, to understand noonday, you have to understand it in the context of I'm in Nitria in Kelia. I'm in Upper Egypt, which is northern Egypt, and it's dry and hot, and there's nothing there, and the sun doesn't seem to move. So you're in your cell, you're at your work. Now, your work physically could be Evagrius was a calligrapher, but let's say you're making baskets to sell, but your main work is prayer, and it looks like the day goes on forever. And so, what does this have to do with the Edict of Milan? Well, in the Edict of Milan, Constantine and his co-emperor make it so that there's no more legal persecution of Christians. And for the Christian of the first 3 centuries, the greatest aspiration was martyrdom. But martyrdom is now not needed. So it is into the desert. And prayer becomes your strongest work, most important work. This is straight Evagrius. Demons attack those in the world through actions and things, but attack the monastic through thoughts. So, how are we connecting this with the epidemic of suicide, loneliness, drug alcohol, which in a way is not opiate overdose at 100,000 a year? Because people are, I think you can actually safely say even in Alcoholics Anonymous, that people and Narcotics Anonymous, that people are trying to fill up a God-shaped hole in their hearts with substances. So this illness, this deficiency that makes you despair that any of your spiritual efforts will make any difference. And for the desert monastic, it says, run away, give up. It won't make any difference. But for our 21st century society, you cannot be killing yourself if you think the world has meaning. And for those people who have a big problem with organized religion and church structures, the key issue is if you don't like the word God, then the word meaning can be a good substitute for that. My father was a militant agnostic, but he believed in humanity. So he's in the Humanists Association, believed in love, goodness, beauty, truth, honor, hope. He believed in the theological virtues of Aquinas, but didn't believe that there was God. So I believe, and we should hypothesize, that this evil thought, as Evagrius would say, principle of vice, as Cassian would say. Aquinas said, the daughter of Akedia is despair. And it is a parasite on the good. Why it's very important is that, speaking as my biological side, parasites don't live on dead things. Technically, it's called a saprophyte. Parasites can only live on things that are living. And so this illness, this evil thought, this demonic thought, because now it's like a microbe that has spread out of the laboratory of the Cenobitic monastic into the general population and is killing us. It stifles the contemplation of meaning. What person who believed that life was filled with meaning would go out and shoot themselves, commit suicide, or murder? So it blocks all conception of blood and goodness. Now, for the monastic, it was laziness and prayer, because it's not going to make any difference. And tied with that is feeling that your community does not care about you. Your community does not care about you. So this word, Akedia, existed in Cicero. And let's think that through. The humans are the only ones who bury their dead, right? Akedia in Greek means funeral, means funeral. And so this is the idea that you don't care about your community. Before there was Evagrius, Anthony in the desert said, I want to be my saved, but my thoughts do not let me go. And so here, the antireticos, which is like antibiotic, talking back. You're going to live to be 90. You're going to get sick. You're going to be poor. Time to count up that 401k. How much are we getting in Social Security? And makes you constantly fear illness. Khalil Gibran, is not the dread of thirst when the well is full, the thirst which cannot be quenched. And so Climacus says a tedium that causes you to become disoriented in the middle of the day when you think that nothing will make any difference. And what is the chief treatment, very medical model, our friend Evagrius, What is the chief treatment? The chief treatment is perseverance. Okay, to persist and to get out and to get to work and to do things all day. And so Cassian, to work all day. And so it changes it into the word laziness or sloth, which is a lousy translation because it's not really laziness. Despair and despondency is a much better terminology. Okay. My soul slept from weariness, as opposed to the Latin. So Cassian's major contribution, he takes Evagrius's name out of everything and goes to Marseille, to the south of France, and brings desert monasticism to Europe. And the remedy for Cassian, as the other monastics, this is the predecessor of the Jesus prayer. Hasten, O God, to save me. Come quickly, Lord, to help me. The predecessor of the Jesus prayer. Benedict says that the treatment is to keep, and that's not in a morbid way, to keep death before one's eyes. Make death your advisor, as Carlos Castaneda said. And that is in the rule. RB means the rule of Benedict, to never despair of God's mercy. And Tristitia de bono divino is the Latin. For Aquinas talks about Akedia before it disappears, and it's to have sadness at divine good, sadness about spiritual good, bono divino, and to disgust with any of our activities. Nothing will make any difference. Okay. And so opposed to the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity, with despair as its child. It is, Akedia, to have the sorrow of the world and to feel that all of joy has been sucked out of living, and all of our efforts, both spiritual and practical, and eventually means that Akedia means that nothing means anything. The despair that you see, man's sin in the garden. The original sin is that we wanted to be like God by eating the fruit of the knowledge of truth, goodness. But now our sin is wanting not to even exist. And Aquinas puts forth the ultimate remedy is the high priest of God, the pontifex, which means we now call the Pope, but really the bridge builder, to deliver us from despair, and that the person who runs our monastery is our doctor. So the Oxford English Dictionary declared Akedia to be a dead word. And who ends up reviving it? Of all people, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, and talked about how the Cenobites, the Thebaid is from Thebes, and also Ian Fleming, the guy that the James Bond movies, James Bond, revived the word Akedia. Who knows? And so it comes that this is the disease of our age. This is my final slide, and then we can go for our discussion a bit past our 11 o'clock part and say here is that our thoughts, our memories, and our senses, based on the quality of our temperament. And remember that one of the virtues of Aquinas is temperance. But ultimately, these actions produce more thoughts. But there must be, and this is the key issue, there must be consent. I'd like to remind us also that we are taught from Evagrius that demons cannot see into our hearts. Our hearts are a sacred place between God and ourselves. And only after consent, we are what we repetitively do. We are what we repetitively do. You cannot teach virtue, but you can have a habit of behavior, Socrates says to Meno. And passion, people like to talk these days about what someone's passionate about, but from a Platonic point of view, It would be more like insanity. And this is the algorithm that creates either our virtue or our downfall. Thank you very much. Feel free to unmute. What do you think, Clark? Clark just turned 21.
I think I'm sort of here as a representative for my generation, and obviously I'm a young white male, which is primarily where the loneliness epidemic seems to be concentrated. I sort of was wondering what your opinion was. So, as I understand it, Akedia is long lasting. Um, it's uh, a demon that eventually does end. And I think in the film, you sort of see his process moving where in the past tense, he's talking about his coverage of the school shootings. And now his development is to try to understand the victims behind it. One of the things that is hard to escape for people of my generation is unlike the monasticists, there really is no retreat. You're sort of constantly exposed through the media, through algorithms that serve content to you automatically. And so, in that context, where there is no real after for the struggle and it's ongoing, how can Acadia be resolved without withdrawing? I don't know.
Uh, I, I, my, again, proposed treatment is what brings meaning to life for people. What brings God? What brings hope? What brings love and goodness? But the main thing is, how do we put meaning into existence for people? Uh, in medicine, people get very worried about burnout, 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 burnout. And the proposed solution is to make things easier, because the proposal is, if things were easier, people would find more meaning. And if you have more meaning, you don't burn out. However, this was never studied. And so several years ago, they made one of our main examinations that every medical student in the country has to take into a pass fail exam, thinking if it's easier, people would be happier. And it was an utter failure. It actually tripled the failure rate. So let's hear what other people have to say. But my response to it is, what brings meaning into life more? That is, and Evagrius just says, keep at it, boy. Go dog go. But the same would happen in Zen Buddhism too. Where they, just persist, sit. But let's see what other people have to say.
Uh, if you're sitting, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. If you're sitting at the bottom of a well and you're complaining and you're lamenting your life situation, doing more and more isn't going to get you out of the well. I wonder, and this goes against most of what's in the air, and that is that a person at the bottom of a well has to realize there has to have a reference outside the well. There has to be something higher that he or she can grab onto um, to him help him get out of the well. Um, now, naturally, as Christians, Orthodox Christians, we say that that is God. We say that that is sacramental life, that is church life, community life. We say that. Um, and how do we tell the guy or the lady down in the well, that they're not going to get out if they just moan and groan about being in the well? I suppose it's up to us to go out and preach. I mean, what else are you going to say? But just to complain about being in the well, I don't see any way out of it.
I think, if I may, first of all, Conrad, thank you for this important film that you have a part. And I would like to say that although we know as Christians that Akedia is something that we should not have, John Cassian says that it is the eight evil thoughts besides Akedia. I think that the pain remains. It was a punch on my stomach when I saw in your film these parents to lose their children from one minute to another, not because of an illness, but because someone who decided to become God, he took their lives. And I wonder that this is something that it can happen to everyone. You are blessed because you put this in our hearts, the pain. Of course, because I live in Greece, we think that it's quite a way, and you hear only numbers. No, you don't see the faces, you don't see people. I think that it is something that we wish not becoming Greece. And because we are a very small country. Of course, when I saw the video, I realized that the numbers of death of these people, of killing these people, of children, they are not only numbers as we hear in the news, but they are pain in the heart of their parents. And whatever we can say about Akedia as Christians or as philosophers, the thing is, my dearest friend, as you said, Conrad, that we cannot get rid of pain so easily. It is very beautiful to say many things from the church fathers, from philosophers, and etc. But in Greece, we say when our door is closed, the pain returns. And there, I have a question. I didn't find the answer. I live near a cemetery. I have seen many mothers and fathers to grieve for their children. Some of them go near God. Some of them go away from God. And I wonder, as a mother, do they go near God because they are afraid that God will permit to lose another of their children? Do they go to God because of the bad fear or because of love? I haven't found the answer. And to tell the truth, perhaps I don't want to find this answer. As a mother, I pray to God every day not to give me this temptation. I prefer to die instead of seeing the death of my children. So I will keep my mouth closed and I will pray for all these people. And again, Conrad, thank you for your beautiful, fruitful speech and for this video. Thank you.
Well, well, anybody else? Because this condition is, it's hard to you see, we're such an international audience. Is that I did not know how this was going to go across as to whether it would be well, it's just an American problem. Uh, yeah, so much for America first policies. First in suicide, first in school shootings. But Judith, you're muted, Judith.
Yes. Maybe Alina can start and then Judith will.
Perfect. Yep. Yes, Lena.
Thank you so much, Conrad, for this tour de force through the history of Acadia from antiquity to now. It seems that depression is a symptom and anxiety. So depression and anxiety would be symptoms of the same condition, the two faces of it, as far as I understand. That this may be an endogenic condition. So some people, the children of Saturn, as you know, were thought of suffering from melancholy. And that was related to creativity in general, the poets, the thinkers, the theologians, and then exogenic depression. So depression, anxiety, melancholy, that is contingent. It seems that today in America, this is what we have, a contingent. It's an epidemic, like you said. So it's not based on temperament necessarily. Sometimes it is a complex condition, but it's based on the loss of meaning that can be started with Nietzsche's declaration, prophecy, or kerygma of the death of God, and then continued, was echoed by the theology of the death of God of the 20th century. So death of God that reflects a loss of value, a loss of the loss of meaning of the entire hierarchy of value. And so that is treated by many, by Tillich among others, the courage to be in the face of non-being, in the face of death, meaninglessness, emptiness. How do we face this? That's what the young people in particular are not prepared to deal with. They are not. They don't live in an environment like you were saying. Well, in the Buddhist or in the monastic tradition, they say, well, persevere, but they were having a background, an environment that they were called back to. But here you cannot tell them persevere, because they persevere in what? In what they were doing before. They don't have a structure. they don't, even if they were raised in a religious tradition, they lost trust, faith, confidence in that tradition. They are moving away. So now they are really living the nihilism that Nietzsche was seeing as the result of the death of God, the death of value and meaning. So how this takes much more work at all levels. It's not a quick fix in any way. It's not a pill. It's not filling the emptiness up with distractions, with games, with activities. Parents are frantically taking their children from one activity to another. Interesting stuff, but that will not fill the abyss of loss of meaning. And the parents don't seem to have that meaning either at hand, even if they were benefiting from having grown up in a particular tradition. Even if they left that tradition, they still have the pillars probably. So it's a very hard work that I don't know how to answer the question what to do. Read, be trained, be initiated, find a church or find a new myth. The right Nietzsche was calling to a transformation and of all myths and the recreation of new myths. New religious myths that would help you, that would help our human nature, that will give back the meaning. But that's an enormous work. So it's not easy. It's not easy, and in the meantime, we have to deal with
I think what you
the
said, that the
consequences.
perseverance when you don't have anything that you're actually to do is not going to work. When you say
No, not at
persevere.
all. Right.
Okay. Thanks very much. Judith, you on?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can now.
Okay. So I spent almost 40 years in the New York City public high schools as teacher and principal. When I was a teacher, I'd see 186 different children a day because we had 5 classes of 35 kids, right? And I want to say that philosophy is one thing. Looking at kids who are really depressed or people who are really depressed is another. But I think it's missing the lived experience of children in our society. Depression is not something that starts and stops and the people have it forever and nobody else has it. There are, in fact, times in everyone's life when they feel down or when you may say they are depressed. And in high school, adolescence is an incredibly difficult period. Physically, you're changing all the time. Your brain is still developing. Your body is changing. Your emotions are all over the place. So many of the people who try to commit suicide and fail say that in the minute they didn't want to do it. They didn't want it. It's not like something that, like blue eyes that you have and then you have them and then they're there. It's a very fluid thing. It depends on, and people who are working closely with adolescents, you understand the immediacy of things, the flux of things, needing to be there for each other, the interaction, because it seems so, the philosopher seems so individually thing, but we are in fact in interaction with other people. Yeah, we had kids die every year that I taught. We'd have one kid who died or was murdered. We did not have suicides. It's a very important thing to look at how come the suicide rate for Black kids and Hispanic kids is lower than for white kids. Still not able to really understand why that is, but it is. For Native Americans, it's high because we have them living in, they're living in communities of, in the ghetto, everybody wants to be a basketball player so that they can get out and buy their mother a house. When you're teaching in the ghetto schools, people want to get out and be better. They want to live. Native Americans, they don't see a way out. They're just, they're in the thing. So I find it not relevant to the lived life of children that I know, especially the sense of despair. It comes, it goes. You pay attention. And for people who are not, it's just like people who, I don't know what to say. Nobody's happy all the time. Adolescents have times of extreme feelings of alone, and 20 minutes later, an hour later, you're really there with them. You're engaging them with them, and it's not there. Children, and this is while in children, there was this story of a true story of a family that had 8 children, twins, and then she had sextuplets, 6 kids all at once. And she was with there was a scene where she was on the beach with all the kids. And one of the kids came over to her and said, "Mommy, I have nobody to play with." Now, this is a kid who was with 5 other, in the womb with 5 other kids and waiting and playing. And she said, "I hear what you're saying. Here's your brother. Here's your sister. I'm here." So the feeling of being lonely, the feeling of being alone is something we live with, we understand, we're with other people, we deal with it, but that's not mass shooting. It's not mass shooting. It's not getting a gun and going out and shooting people. So much of that is opportunity. You talk to people. I remember reading, they said, I was so angry and I was so upset and the gun was on the table and I took it and I went and shot him. I don't know. I'm like all over the place, but I feel that I've known too many kids for too long actively being part of their lives, actively understanding that so many of these things that we're not one thing and we're not one emotion. And we do live in community. And some of us are in the well all the time. If you're raising Black children or in a Black community, every time they go out the door, they know that they're not loved or considered the same as everybody else. Every single time, every single day. Yet our suicide rate is low. Might be changing, but I think that our understanding has to be a little more than that.
Well, this is a table of contents for the future. This is not definitive. This is starting a pathway to see what's there. So we don't know. We don't know. Okay. Judith, thank you for your, as always, indispensable contributions from your unique lived experiences. Let's take 2 final comments, questions from Julia and Clark, and then we open the Greek room. Okay, Julia.
Thank you, Conrad, for your very helpful, constructive presentation to me. And I really appreciate Clark's remark, because my particular, a solid chunk of my attention goes to the daily living of our faith. I think it's in the fabric of daily living. That's where we can make transformations, first of all, of our own lives, and second of all, hopefully that can create a ripple ripple effect that change the world, so to speak. So for me, what Clark says is very real. I have that battle every single day. So on the one hand, I hope I can be in an environment that's more formative, fostering, helping me to be growing into a greater likeness of Christ, I mean, so to speak. On the other hand, I'm exposed to many things constantly that might counteract to that purpose. So I get that all of you are sharing the meaning. Yes, I mean, for sure. And for me, the question I need to find answer and act upon is, how can I connect myself and put myself on the pathway to live towards the meaning, to on the ongoing process of discovering the meaning and purpose of my life, and put myself on the path, actively connecting to that meaningful path on a daily basis. And with that, under that frame, it takes personal choice and takes community, you guys are emphasizing, and caring support and caring attention from my brothers and sisters. And I'm no longer a teenager, but I wrote that path. So looking back, I knew caring attention, how precious, how important that would be. And another thing, the last thing I would mention is also virtuous friends, virtuous friendship would have been a very critical help looking back of that life stage. But the current stage, still, virtual friendships would be a huge help if I had those friendships in my life, and then mutually helping one another, mutually keeping one another accountable, and mutually creating one another into a greater growth on the daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Final word there, Clark.
I know I'm cutting into the Greek time, so I apologize.
Well, we'll shrink the break at the end.
Yeah, I think we will extend now. So let's say that we are 15 minutes ahead. Okay, so everything will be shifted, like 15 minutes ahead. So we are okay.
I would be
Go ahead, Clark.
I would be a bit remiss. We've talked a lot about kind of the perpetrators and how to balance, kind of, I don't know about empathize with them, but to understand the despondency, the loneliness in them. But I think I'd be remiss if we didn't try to talk about the victims and maybe the general public. And throughout the film, there's kind of the implicit idea that society, people of the general community have become sort of despondent with school shootings just in general, right? I mean, they feel covered less. Certainly for myself, I've felt myself become sort of numb to them over time. And in my preparation for this, I had read about antireticos, as sort of a tool from Evagrius to fight certain demons by invoking a verse from the Bible. And so I'm speaking somewhat from a place of ignorance, but I had felt that the film was similarly a sort of tutorial where you could always conjure, and I think that I wrote down this quote from Steve Hartman, the news anchor, where he says, after every school shooting, I know that the room is out there. I can place myself in that room, and it hurts a lot more. And so maybe I had seen that portion of the film and maybe the idea of the empty rooms as sort of instructive or a tool that you can use to fight that despondency in yourself day to day. You can always imagine that empty room. And so I wonder, is the film trying to do something sort of analogous to antiresis, like a tool to combat that moral numbness? Or is it something different?
I hadn't thought about that. That's beautiful, because the answer is 100%. And so the final word we'll make about this that the film, and then we'll go and open our breakout rooms, is it is not the question of are our efforts, can we say that our efforts made a difference? It is, did we do everything we could? And so I think that's brilliantly put. That as the executive director, I forgot to say that I went to the Academy Awards 2 years ago in 2023. It is to talk back. That's right.
Can I
Judith, our
say,
final word.
yeah, I just want to say, I was the high school principal when Columbine happened. I was working in high schools as I said, almost 40 years. Every time we saw these stories on school shootings in the media, some parent or someone would say, "We never thought it would happen here." We never said that in the Bronx. We never, ever said this could never happen here. And so, as Clark's talking about fighting back, our mission, our duty, our entire lives were, we have all these children in the building with us, and they're walking through these neighborhoods back and forth every day, and they have their families every day. We have kids living lives who've seen their brothers die of overdoses, see their parents die of AIDS, see all that. But our necessity, our whole life, was to be there for the community, each kid in there, what has to happen outside of it, not to take anybody for granted. And I'm not going to say it could never happen here. It might, but I think that I think we need more attention to society groups, the mission of the educators, the sense of the whole society rather than just the individuals. And we cannot take anybody for granted. We cannot take any child for granted. We can create spaces where this is addressed. We can do that. And there are kids who get depressed. I mean, we have families, kids get depressed, but the attention, the necessity to be there, creating schools and places where people truly are cared for is very important. And that has to be the center of what we're doing. It has to be what the United States is about. And we have to have loads of people who are interventionists, who, when we do know somebody, see a kid who's truly in trouble, we know where to put them, what to do. I just feel the need to say this. The kids, the victims, which I see in the films, the victims are very different. The victims are somebody who's walking through the streets and gets killed because they're in the wrong place at the same time, because somebody walked into the classroom. That's 90% of the people. That's who we have to take care of. And that's not about Akedia. That's about communities not being there for those who do succumb to great tragedy.
Thank you, Judith. All right, the Greek room is the steward room. Let's go in. Also, what we'll do is we will have this next session just go into 1 o'clock. And so we'll just move it forward by 15.